Good evening, guys. I'm going to show you what I have for my auto rigger. I basically just have a biped character, just a standard human male. This visual representation, this is the X-ray, so you can turn X-ray on and off. It makes it easier to spot your locators or your spheres, whatever you have. And this is like the visual representation. When giving out my auto rigger for people to test out, I've noticed that some people really like the spheres and some people really like the locator, so I gave that option to them. Joint size is pretty self-explanatory. It's just the joint size. This color is manipulating the locator group, so you can add a texture in here. It just makes it so it's easier to see the locators. So this whole script runs based on the height locators. Basically, it just goes from the origin of the grid to the top of the head. And if I generate these locators, it fits perfectly with this human biped because I created it that way. But what I'm going to do in the future is put a preset panel. That way you can save presets and load presets. If I was creating a Yordle, for example, and I spent the time actually moving these locators where I want them to fit the proportions, you can save that preset for later characters. So if you have a character with similar proportions, maybe a few minor tweaks, you can load those presets, so it saves a lot of time. This also goes for if you have a female character. Obviously, it's different proportions than a male character. Also, A pose, T pose, etc. So you can put all of those presets in, and it actually makes it worth spending time putting those locators, because if you ever do run across it in the future, you can just save the preset or load the presets, and it saves you a lot of extra time. So creating the skeleton, it will create your biped skeleton. It has an RFL system, everything. Right now it has no connections, but if I just do the make connections, it'll just connect everything together. And then I also have a task log, so you can see whatever you're doing. It's like, oh yeah, 20 over 20, that means everything works according to plan. But if I head over to step 2, which is the control creator, right now this is what I'm working on, but it will only create the IKFK switch for the arms. But it will create your controls, but eventually it's going to create all of the controls for the whole body. And it works on vector. So I have, actually I have world on right now. So the movement is based in the local direction. So that way you have 0 rotation values on your arms for your IKs. So you create the rig, and you can select all the controls and manually scale them, make them bigger. But the scale is determined based on the height that we determined at the beginning. So we can create the rig, and it'll create our basic IKFK switch. And what's really cool about this is it doesn't work for just bipeds. Maybe I want a character with 4 arms. I can go back to the joint layout and add a custom limb, and it is basically how to enable the limb, then place the locators where you want the joints to be. So if I wanted to add an extra arm, I can specify the name, the amount of joints, say monster arm, and we'll create this character with 4 arms. And you can create the skeleton, and you can tell it whether you want it to mirror or not. And once you do that, since you made a custom limb, you'll have to do a custom connection. And basically you select the driver driven. Here I'll just select the clavicle and the arm. And what it does is it gets the driver's bind joint, and it gets the driven's pad joint. So that way you don't have to go into the hierarchy and manually select the driver's bind and the driven's pad. It does it automatically for you, and then it goes ahead and makes that connection. Pretty cool. So I'll just do that here. Oh yeah, you can do the waist joint. That's usually how it works. Make the connection, so it moves together. Now it all moves together. Now what we can do is, if we go back to our control creator, it remembers what you've done previously, so it'll only create new controls based on what you added. And then if you create the rig, it creates the FK switch, and there you go. There's your extra arm if you have so. So my plans for this is I plan on having a bunch of options. You can either check if you want IK FK arms, if you just want FK arms, if you want variable FK tails. The cool thing about this custom limbs is once you figure out how the actual limb works and the type of systems that you can use, it can be endless amount of possibilities. So I can use an arm for a tail. I can just specify the amount of joints and be like, oh, you know, I want 7 joints and I want this to be a tail. And be like 7 joints. I don't want it to mirror, and I can be center. And if I create these locators, it will create the locators of a tail. And then this, I can determine whether I want the tail to be IK-FK switch, if I want it to be variable FK. So it's pretty cool what you can do and what I plan on doing. So once I have all the controls and all the setup part, that's when I'm going to tackle into the weight painting. And for the weight painting, I've had this idea, I was brought up with this idea, and I kind of explored more onto it. What I want to do is take the local orientations of these joints, and I want to cut a line right on the local, like the vector axis, and basically create an additional proxy rig where the locators are placed. And then after I have that proxy rig, I will use that proxy geo and put it on the skin weights, and that will be the starting point of what it is. So this, say the arm right here, is the proxy geo, and all of this section right here will be weighted to 1 based on the proxy for the placement. And then you would just give it a few smooth fall offs, and then that will create your very hard edged kind of like the elbows, the fingers would look really nice. It would get rid of this the shoulder area, also the knee area, so it would work very well. The only parts that wouldn't work very well, I'm going to have to experiment on how I'm going to do it, is this this hip region, so and the butt area. But other than that, all the other areas should be pretty well. But yeah, that's what I'm going to experiment with and explore. I still have about a month left to finals, so if any feedback you guys can give me, that would be awesome. But I hope you enjoyed this little podcast, and see you later.